Yo, what's up, Grand Rising? How you doing? This is your coach Renz, and welcome to a Tuesday edition of What's Wrong Now. Tuesday edition of Deconstructing Christianity with your guide, your coach, Coach Renz. And tonight we're going to be discussing, is Christianity an African religion or European religion? I'm sure many of you already know the answer to that, but we will dive into why people say such a thing. Now, we usually give about 5 minutes before we get started so that people have the opportunity to get on to the show. And also an opportunity for any quick questions, but also just greetings and greetings and greetings. What's up, Heel? I see you already here. That is one of the things we will cover about those types of situations, and we'll get deeper into them as we go. But right off the bat, there are some similarities, but very few similarities between Horus and Jesus. But there are some points that seems to be have taken from that Horus story that was added to the Jesus story. But we will get more into that a little bit later on. Don't want to spoil it. Don't want to spoil it. Let me see. Got the good shirt on. You can get your merchandise. The description in the description of the channel on YouTube, you can get your merchandise, as well as on most of the videos on Facebook. You can get your merchandise. Shameless plugs must be done. What up, Sean? Sean has been dubbed by commenters as my preacher. I ain't gonna lie to y'all, my body hurting right now. That workout today was it was a little tough. It was a little tough on me. What's up, Donovan? How you doing? Welcome to the show. Let me check. Let me check a few things. Trifo, what's up? I see that some of the usual suspects are arriving onto the platforms. We are streaming on YouTube and Facebook. So pick which one you like. And we are streaming. I didn't make any videos today, regular videos, but I will make them after this show has completed. Probably make a short one about this show in itself. I wish it was 18 holes. We just did a track workout today, and the track won. I don't know how people play golf here in San Antonio. It's windy as hell. So I know it's going to be some struggle bus going on when I do go play here. When I do play, because it's just the ball just gets snatched. It just went, just like right now, the window is open, it's just blowing. So I had to open up all the other windows upstairs just so that it'll flow through. Because my little vent system are just being defeated as far as my cigar in this room, in our smoke room, because the wind is blowing so hard in here. Shit. We'd be better off if this room was on the opposite side of the house with a window that way. Well, then when that other wind shifts, yeah, it's windy as hell in San Antonio. So how's everybody else doing? I sound tired. I sound tired myself. You know, I must really love y'all because I be giving up my Atlanta Hawks basketball games. So since we got a minute, about 30 seconds, and check the score here. Oh, 70-57 at halftime. That's what's up. That's what we like. I see who's doing the damage. I see who's doing. Okay, all right. Got over them shooting goals. I'm joking to shooting 29% in the last two games on threes. All right, what's up, Dwayne? How you doing? All right, Maria, how you doing? Stop jumping the gun. Don't jump the gun. We haven't gotten there yet. Yes, Lucian, we can see you. We can see you. So, welcome to Deconstructing Christianity. I am your coach, your guide, Coach Renz, and tonight we will be discussing, is Christianity an African or a European religion? One of the main catalysts for this is because, I try to use some of the more common questions that I get from people as to longer discussions about them beyond the 10-minute videos that I normally produced. Now, I want to thank everybody who supports the channel, whether you support the channel this way, or through being a member on YouTube and a subscription holder on Facebook, or super chats that you give on YouTube and stars on Facebook. So I thank everybody for their support of the channel. Biggest support that I thank you for is just being here and sharing the channel, sharing the videos. Haven't quite figured out how the changes in the algorithm yet, so that we get continue to grow our audience like we were growing this time last year. So if anybody has any ideas on the new algorithm for Facebook, especially, let me know. Because I haven't quite figured it out yet. Usually we were growing by 10,000 per month, somewhere between 8 to 10,000 per month. They changed the algorithm, and now we're growing by like 1,000 per month. So, hey, heal. Don't get blocked. Don't get blocked, heal. Don't get blocked. We're talking about my team now. I'm Atlanta born and bred. We can have a hacky sack team, and I'll be cheering for the hacky sack team. Welcome to the show, Leon, Robert, Casey. Welcome to the show. Forgot you all are done with the daylight saving time. Was expecting an hour later. Yeah, we got that. We got that thing still going. So, where does this question come from? Well, there's an argument that is made in Black American world, and I'm gonna say Black American world because it's usually Black Americans that I hear that makes this argument. Oh, you're believing everything that the white man wrote. Oh, the Christianity was originally a Black religion, an African religion, but then because it went to Africa first, but the Europeans stole it and they changed it all up. So then you hear, well, Christianity started in Rome, really. I mean, it was truly built in Rome. It's a Roman religion, and they changed everything to fit the Roman dichotomy. So it's a European religion. This is mainly what you hear. That sound on the side is because of the wind. The door keep making it a little open close, so hopefully it won't disturb you guys too much. But those are generally the statements that we get when people are saying that Christianity is a stolen African religion and is a European religion. And tonight we want to delve into the thought process of whether or not any of that is actually true, or how much of it is true, or if it's just complete fugazi. And I really want to hear you guys' opinions on it. So, before I even get started, does anybody here think that Christianity was originally an African religion that was then taken by the Europeans, or even taken by the people of the Levant, and made into a Middle Eastern religion or a European religion? Many people assert this claim. Some because they will say that geographically, the Middle East is really East Africa, or the people there were Black, or as Casey just said, that it has its roots in Egypt. And we're going to cover that part as to whether or not it has any roots in Egypt. But this whole idea of Christianity, they think that it started in Africa, that it was in Africa before it was ever in Europe, and then the Europeans stole it. Eric says absolutely not. Thoughts on mystic Christianity, the involvement of other religions and cults such as the Gnostics, Squidmeister. We will get to them as well. If I get to a part and I forget about them, let me know. But I'm gonna try to give you the history of this religion in a nutshell. Philadelphia in the building. What's up, Wayne? Sean says he's up in the air on it. All right, so I was perplexed as how I wanted to attack this subject. Did I want to attack it by starting in the past and moving forward, or did I want to start in our more present and move backwards in order to really facilitate this religion? But because I believe that we will spend more time talking about the past, the ancient time frame, the roots of things, I figure we start in the beginning. We start start more in the now and move backwards in time. So the most popular book of the Bible, the most popular interpretation of the Bible, is the King James Version of the Bible. This is what many other Bibles are translations of, whether we're looking at the NIV or the NSAB. But it runs afoul to other ones like the English Standard Bible, the New Revised Edition, the Revised Edition. And as most of you guys know, when I'm using a part of their scripture to describe something, I always use the New Revised Standard or the Revised Standard. And the reason being is because it is the most accurate version of the Bible that they can have. It is the most accurate that they can have. Which always poses a question, and is one of the reasons why I deconstructed for Christianity, because if you go back in time, you would realize that the Christianity of today would be considered foreign or heresy to people in 1st century, 2nd century, 3rd century. So when we look at the King James Version, the King James Version of the Bible is basically a translation of a Swedish Bible. But the problem with this Swedish Bible is that the person Rasmussen believed that he was translating from the Greek, from completely the Greek, and saying as the New Testament was supposed to be Greek, written in Greek, he thought he had the best copies. Now, he only had the copies that were in Switzerland at the time frame. There were many other Greek copies that he didn't have access to, and King James and his 54 scribes thought that this was the best situation to translate from, since it was, one, widely utilized, and then two, it wasn't coming from the Latin, because the Latin Vulgate was translated supposedly from the Greek. So why go through the middleman, jump all the way to the original? So this is why that version was chosen. I didn't drop a video today. Excuse me. I was almost about to sneeze. Dusty. So what do we have? We have this situation where the King James Version is a unique translation because it's only using Greek versions that they had in Switzerland. It wasn't as if Rasmussen went to the Vatican or went to any archives elsewhere and had access to those and translated them. He had none of those things. He only had his version. It would be like if you're trying to write the Snow White story, but the only thing you have is Disney's version. You don't have the original version. You got Disney's. So this is why when you look at a revised standard or a new revised standard, you'll see that there are many differences between that and the King James Version of the Bible. Well, one simple example is When you look at the King James Bible in the sixth day, when it says that God created man and woman, told them be fruitful and multiply, have dominion over the earth, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. But in the New Revised Standard, it says be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. The reason why it says filled, and this used to get me back in the day. This used to get me. I was like, okay, it says replenish. That means there had been people here beforehand. But the actual most correct version is to say fill the earth. So, and that's when I started to realize that the Genesis chapter 1 was written after Genesis chapter 2. But the point being is that King James Version got the word wrong. And there are many instances where the wording was changed. The James Bible had like 16 different protocols that they had to follow. They had to call if it said congregation, they had to make it say church. Anything that talked badly about rulership, the monarchy, those had to be left out. So it was all these different rules in governing this translation. So we know the King James Version is not the most accurate version, but King James made his, and that's one of the most popular. Swiss guy made his. All throughout the history of the Bible, as we go back, it is other church fathers, European church fathers, who are making their versions of this Bible. And then you had and most of them were based on the Vulgate, but then this guy flipped everything on his head, and it started coming out of Rasmussen made it start coming out of the Greek, but he didn't have good copies of the Greek. So the Vulgate is just the Septuagint translated into Latin. And like, this is where we get the term Lucifer, but it makes some certain mistakes. When Lucifer is mentioned in Revelation and in Isaiah, it is the light bringer. It is a reference to the light bringer. But when it's mentioned in, I believe, Peter, the Greek word there is not phosphorus, but it starts with an H, but sounds like phosphorus. And I just fell out my head what it is. But it's a different word, which gives it a different connotation. So the Vulgate was lacking in certain translations of that nature. And if they didn't have a word that would match, they would approximate the closest word that they had to it, i.e. Isus become Ius, and then in the 1600s, it becomes Jesus. So you have these differences that change things. So instead of it being Yahshua, it becomes Ius, then Isus, and then Jesus. So it is easy to understand how the Europeans owned, for the most part, the Bible. But the Vulgate was created, and if you go back some more, you have all these different meetings, these different councils, and all these councils are organizing Christianity, and it's organizing it under the Roman Catholics. This Roman Catholic comes up because of the Council of Nicaea. The Council of Nicaea was in 325, and this was Constantine's way of organizing Christianity, because Christianity had failed its original mission. Christianity's original mission was to stamp out Messianic Judaism by giving them a Messiah that had already come. But it didn't work. It's just basically created a new religion. So in creating this new religion, Constantine is trying to organize this religion, because there were fights amongst Christians all throughout the Roman Empire from 1st century all the way up to 4th century. And these fights were disruptive enough that it was seen as a destabilizing force in the Roman government. So he had to solidify it. It wasn't that he was so much into Christianity. By making Christianity legal, it didn't satisfy the issue. You had Christians on different corners of the street teaching different things, making different claims. You had a litany of different books that ran counter to one another. You had the Gnostics, you had the Marcians, you had the Lucians, you had so many other groups. You had those who followed more of the secret writings of Peter, or the secret writings of John, or the the I think it's the Apocalypse of Adam, which, or Apocalypse of James, or the Gospel of Adam. And you had so many other books that was out there that Christianity was a wild boy. He was out there all over the place. And people were believing different things, and they were literally coming to blows over these things, right? Fighting, fighting, fighting. So I'm just trying to read a few of the comments. Okay. So all of these things were happening. And if you look at it from that standpoint, then Christianity does seem to be a European religion. The Europeans took it up. The Europeans developed it. The Europeans grew it. But these Europeans were growing this religion based on the fact that the writings that they had in their hands, that I suggest and lean more towards the idea that they were written by Josephus ben Matthias when he was in the court of Vespasian, probably helped by Philo of Alexander, and who was an important and one of the richest men in the first century and the early second century in Alexandria. He was a Hellenistic Jew, just as Josephus was a Hellenistic Jew, and that this religion was created by Josephus in order to stop the Jewish Messianic movement as ordered by Vespasian and then seconded by Titus. All of this happening in late first century and early second century. But since the movement started, so you have a Hellenistic Jew who's writing this New Testament. You already have Judaism, which was written in the Septuagint. That was, and wait a minute, before I go there. So all those writings in that first, second, third century, we're looking at those, and this would be your Codex Sinaiticus that's being written here. This is all these things in Greek. And then you got your Septuagint, which is the Old Testament, which the Greeks on the Ptolemy had written during the time frame when Greece controlled Egypt and the Levant. And so this religion starts out with Europeans taking somewhat control over it from as far back as around 200 BCE. And then you have the Greek influence, but then they gain back control with the Maccabees, and then the Romans come in, and then we go through all of that I just spoke about. So you have this trail of European influence, but the difference is the European influence you may find in certain parts here and there, but the main concepts of this doesn't come from the Europeans. It wasn't invented by the Europeans. It's a Hellenistic Jew that utilized the Messianic movement to create Christianity, seconded by another Hellenistic Jew in Philo. And so this is written by people who were Hellenistic Jews. They were brown people. They were the people of the Levant. They were Mediterranean people. They were believing they were Israelites. These were not the Europeans who created it. Cultivated, decide which version of it that they're going to have, sure. But was it all just Europeans? No. Eusebius of Caesarea was born in the Levant. Irenaeus, all these people are Mediterranean people. Irenaeus, Jerome, Justin Martyr, although the portraits of them show these lily white people, that's not what they look like. They were Mediterranean people coming from all over the Levant and Egypt and modern day Turkey and Rome itself, all that region. This was Mediterranean. It was not truly European. So I think just with that, we can rule out the fact that it was a religion that was created by Europeans. Unless you just want to say that since Vespasian ordered it, it was created by a European. But Vespasian wasn't ordering it to say, ooh, I want to make a new religion so that I can control the world. It was, I need you to make something that gives them their Messiah, so that the Messianic people will stop fighting and causing problems in the Roman Empire. And the problem mostly was the Messianic Jews were fighting against the Orthodox Jews who were on the Roman side. Those were the bigger problems. The biggest group in the first century and early second century that were being persecuted by Rome wasn't the Christians, but it was the Jews, because they were revolting in Alexandria, Egypt. They were revolting in the Levant, mainly because of the temple tax issue. And the temple tax is where you can have your God, but you have to worship Caesar at least once a year. Problem is, in the Jewish Judaism, you can't have any altars, you can't have any idols or any pictures or anything like that. So I just didn't say altars. You can't have idols. It was something else I was thinking that when I was saying altars. But you can't have any pictures. So you can't put a statue of Caesar in the temple. So the arrangement previous was pay a temple tax and you don't have to worship Caesar, right? The Messianic movement wanted to get rid of the whole thing. They were looking for somebody who was going to free them. And so they're fighting against the Pharisees, the Sadducees. They're fighting against those people. Every year, there's a new person claiming to be the Messiah who's going to free them, who's going to be just like the Maccabees, but it was never happening. But this was causing problems. Now, yeah, shrines, thank you. That is the word I was looking for, shrine. So it's not a European religion. Now, if we also look at the European religions that were close to the Levant, so European Mediterranean, so we're not looking at Thor and Odin, even though we could look at Woden, because the Germanics, that was actually a Germanic religion that turned into the Norse religion. The stories of Thor, the stories of Odin, the stories of Surtur, and all these other, the Druids and all these people, their religion there are very few connections to the Hebraic religion and definitely Christianity. And in order to be connected, you have to be connected to the Judaic religion, because that's where it comes from. But at the time frame that the Judaic religion came about, the Europeans were not involved in the Levant. From 800 BCE until 400 BCE, when this religion truly developed, there were no connections to the Germanic people. They weren't talking to people who were worshiping Odin and all of them. Those connections weren't there. It wouldn't be until the Roman Empire where these people would have connections with each other, and even at that, the connection was very limited, right? Incredibly limited. So you just don't have that connection to be able to say it. You can't make it part of there. But when you look at the Greek or Roman religion, which are more of a parallel religion to one another, and you can also throw the Berbers into that discussion, their religions were the pantheistic Zeus equaling Jupiter, Apollo, Mars, Ares. This was this polytheistic religion that the only similarities that they had is that in the earlier parts, in the 800, 600, 500, 400 BCE, and you don't really get a true monotheistic religion in the Hebraic work until around the Hasmonean dynasty, and that's in the 2nd century BCE. The only similarities that they really have was the pantheons, that there's a supreme God. The supreme God has a wife. They birth out other gods. You don't really get that until this is why in the Old Testament you find the El Elyon and the B'nai Elohim. You got the divine council in the Old Testament over and over again, because they had that same pantheon of gods, because it was more based on watching nature and watching the skies. So it was vastly different. So as we had covered last week, the Hebrew religion comes from the Canaanites, which the Canaanites come from the Sumerians slash Arcadians. So the Abrahamic portion of it is not European, it's Middle Eastern religion. Is deep, it's a Mesopotamian religion that later on gets a few differences when you look at their captivity under Assyria, when you look at their captivity under Babylon. But when they're under the Greeks and the Romans, there's no homogeny there. It doesn't work, right? Doesn't work at all. So when you then look at Christianity, Christianity doesn't really match up to any of the European style religions. It doesn't match up to Hercules. It doesn't match up to Achilles. It doesn't match up to Hades and Zeus and all of them. It just simply doesn't match up. Because the Ius and then it's Isus, people like to say that it's a saving Zeus or it's really just a worship of Zeus. But in truth, it's the fact that this word Yeshua doesn't have a translation in Greek. But the transliteration of it, which would be the God, the main God, would be Ius and then Isus. It's the closest they can get to having the same meaning. So it's not a translation, it's a transliteration. Because they can't, you ever meet that person from Japan or from Vietnam and they words with V and W, they really can't say it or they struggle with it? It's because they grew up in a country where their language doesn't have that sound. So when your language doesn't have that sound, you can't, you would do a transliteration if you just want to have a word that has only your sounds in it to make it so that it's still understood. Now, moving forward. So Christianity then doesn't have any connections to the Greek stories, although you can find certain similarities. Those similarities are very few. There were people of religions all over the world that believed that a god came down and had sex with a mortal woman and produced a demigod. You can't really say that they pulled that from the Greeks or anybody else because they already had that in their story when the fallen angels, the Nephilim, came down and had sex with the women and created the Nephilim. They already had that. They already had that from the Epic of Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh himself is a demigod. Enkidu is a demigod. So there were already demigods in the Mesopotamian religion. So that was more of a mind shared type of thing. Right? And as we discussed last week, did they take stories from other religions to make it more European? No. The parts of Christianity that made it more palatable to Europeans are things like whatever government you're born under, that authority was given by God. So how Europeans, but this is just not a European thing, but it just made it more palatable that the emperor of Rome is bestowed godhood. Kings are the conduit that God speaks, so they were able to create their popes and create their bishops and create and say that the king is a representation of God on the planet, right? So they would do things like that. They would take their statues of different gods and make them the statues of the apostles or statues of Jesus or the Holy Spirit and all these different things like, the dove and all that sort of thing. This made it more palatable for Europeans to accept it because it was similar enough to their own religion. It's kind of like when you got these new age pastors and they'll be in there talking about energy and vibration and all that, which is something that pastors didn't speak on 30 years ago, but they're speaking on it now because it's more palatable to people in today's world because we understand vibration, frequency, and energy. Or this whole idea about it's about relationship. It's about having a relationship with God, with Jesus. When I was growing up, nobody, that was blasphemy if you were to say that you have a relationship with God or a relationship with Jesus. You know, in the 1970s, 1980s, that is not something you would have spoken out of your mouth, but somewhere in the 90s, that became a thing, right? So it becomes more palatable. So you have more Neoplatonism that's added to the Bible so that it worked with Roman thought. And then as it progressed over time, it had to work with whatever cultural thought that the Europeans were having, right? Uh, yes, and you had some things that people were used to. Dionysius turned water into wine. So when you're writing the Jesus story, he turns water into wine at the wedding in Cana. So things like that are easy for them to contemplate and understand. But you know what? That actually, so let me reframe. That is a possibility that story was taken from Dionysius and added to the Jesus story because it was a similarity. The whole idea of Paul and being knocked off his horse, blinded, and then coming into the revelation, that's a Dionysius story as well. So those things could have been added to make it more palatable. So I will give you that one. But most of it is philosophical. Slaves obey your masters, whether they're good or bad, you know, just as you would do Jesus. Women stay subservient. Those things are more what they were looking for. It made it work for Europeans, but it didn't make it a European religion, right? It was still at this point I forgot to light my cigar. It's still at this point a Mediterranean religion that has now been adopted and is being molded. When the first writings of it were not European based. The first writings of it was based on what the Jewish people would accept, because the hope was that they would then follow that instead of Judaism, and Judaism would die. Reginald, please do not write in all caps. So I need to light my cigar. This is a house cigar from a local place here in San Antonio. So the whole thing about it being a white man's religion is not true. It's a Mediterranean religion. It started out as a Mediterranean religion from that point. Now, the part that they really love to do, what a lot of black people like to jump on, is to say that Christianity came, there's 2 points that black people like to talk about. 3, actually. We'll cover all 3. Christianity first went to Africa before it went to Europe. Well, that's just completely untrue, even based on their own Bible. Because according to their own Bible, Christianity was taken to Egypt relatively at the same time that it went into Turkey and across the straits into Europe, and at the same time that Paul was taking it to Rome, and the same time that Peter was supposedly taking it to Rome. So in and around the late 1st century, Christianity was in Rome, just like Christianity was in Egypt. Now, the problem is that Egypt is in Africa, but Egypt ain't Africa. You understand what I'm saying? It's a part of Africa, but it's not all of Africa. This one will last me almost 2 hours, Reginald, because I'm talking. If I'm just sitting chilling, it would only last me about an hour. No, it's not an African religion that started in Africa. It's a religion that started in the Levant. When these things were first written by Josephus, and um, they were sent to the Levant, they were sent to Judea. Those writings were taught in Judea first before they were taught anywhere else. Then the spread of them went to Egypt and Rome within a few years of each other. So it didn't go to Africa first, as far as going into, and what they try to make it seem like it went into sub-Saharan Africa. So when the slave trade was happening, those people were Christians. It wasn't in sub-Saharan Africa. The farthest it reached in the first, in the late first century, the whole of the second century, and not until the beginning of the third century did it reach into Ethiopia. It took until 330 CE before it traveled from the Levant to Ethiopia. And this is true. The oldest Christian nation is Armenia, because they were the first nation to declare themselves as a Christian nation. The second is Ethiopia. So the Armenians declared themselves a Christian nation in 301 CE. Ethiopia declared itself a Christian nation in 330 CE. I mean, there was a question I thought I saw that might be. Okay, so was it the Romans that spread Christianity into Europe? Pretty much. Well, it was some Hellenistic Jews who first brought it into Rome, and then it spread throughout Rome by other Romans. And this started in late first century, and it didn't gain its prominence until around the late second century, late third century, early fourth century. And yes, and like the Romans brought it to England, and the Romans really were the ones who spread it throughout Europe after they first got it going, after 325. I can't post that, Reginald, but I'd rather have my cigar than za. Right? I don't subscribe to any religion. You should have been here last night, Buckshit. Buckshit. I want y'all to see the name. I'm not being derogatory. But yeah, I don't subscribe to any religion. Last night I described everything about an hour. So if you listen to the live from yesterday, go to the 1 hour mark. According to the biblical tradition, yes, Paul was the one who was responsible mainly for spreading Christianity to Europe. Peter had his part too, according to the secret writings of Peter. He was also in Rome as well, and Christian tradition says that Peter also went to Rome. Now, the question then becomes: is Paul a real person? We're not 100% sure on that. But somebody that these first 7 letters ascribe to is a guy named Paul. But because Paul sounds a lot like, and I can't think of the guy's name in the Dionysus story, it's a possibility that even Paul himself was made up and those letters were written and given a pen name of Paul. To be Hellenized is not necessarily to believe in their gods. To be Hellenized means that you adapt a Greek lifestyle, a Greek culture. Oftentimes there is the comparison. Oh, you have El. El is just like Zeus. You got Michael. Michael is just like Ares. So they find commonality and try to mash the gods together. That's how you get Serapis. But they try to like make show that like we're not different. And you got to remember, people back then weren't like how we are today. People back then were accepting of other people's religious beliefs and believed that their belief was real. So you got your God is real, he's just not my God. So they differed like that. Now, in around 329, a shipwreck happened off the coast of Ethiopia, and there was a dude on there named Frumentius. Frumentius was a bishop or a cardinal out of the Coptic Church in England under Athanasius, the Bishop Athanasius, and he was held as a slave for about 6 months or so, and then he was released to go back to Egypt. When he went back up to Alexandria, Egypt, he asked permission from Athanasius to come down and convert King Azana into Christianity. Once King Azana was converted into Christianity in 330, he then ordered that the only religion, the state religion of Ethiopia is Christianity. But Frumentius brought with him the books of Enoch, the Jubilees, Jasher, all these other books, which is why their book is 88 books. Now, this kind of stuff, just like people have changed other people's history, Ethiopians themselves have changed their own history or claim things in history that are unproven. I go with archaeology and things that you can find. Right? The lineage of Ethiopians, yes, they have had mixtures of different people and different rulers and different families and all this kind of stuff. But like, there's no proof that any Judaism was ever in Ethiopia prior prior to Jesus. There's no proof of the Ethiopian eunuch going into Ethiopia and converting over anybody. There's no proof of Sheba or Queen Candace going and getting down with Solomon and they having Menelik the first. There's no era of Menelik the first and Menelik the second that is claimed by Haile Selassie. Like, all of that stuff is made up by the rulers. So the Ebonite Christians before were the Ebonites Christians before? I can't say. I'm not sure. Let me, because I know about them. I just can't bring them in my head right now. I need that little spark plug of information. Oh, I thought you were talking about something. I was thinking about some other group, but no, the Ebonites would have become. It's more likely that the Ebonites became Christian before the Armenians. But understand who are the Ebonites though. Just because it looks like ebony doesn't mean it's people. It's people in sub-Saharan Africa. Uh, these are Palestinians. These are Nazareans. These are different. These are not just. These are not. Oh, it's a Ebonite, so they must be from sub-Saharan Africa because it sounds like ebony. Yeah. And the Ebionites were actually hated. They fall into that category of groups that were different, that didn't follow the same type of Christianity that Eusebius and Origen and Jerome and Justin Martyr. Like most of the information you find about them are negative information, except for like the Dead Sea Scrolls. And I fell behind you guys' comments. So this kind of question, if Adam was black, which persons are they really talking about? Africans or people from the Middle East? Because the concept of the first man is not really known in culture. So first, Adam never existed. That's the first thing. There is no Adam. The Adam of the Bible never existed. Do I follow the out of Africa as a fact, not just a theory? Yes. Does that mean that if that's the statement, then you would have to say that the Germanic religion is an African religion. The Shinto is an African religion. The Mongolian religion is an African religion. The Americans, the religion of the Tianos is an African religion. You understand what I'm saying? Like, just because a person is from somewhere doesn't make what they do when they're somewhere else from the place that they ancestors would have come from. So when you look at the out of Africa situation, sub-Saharan Africa, people migrated up into the Middle East and then migrated over to Europe, migrated into the Americas, to Asia, migrated into India, into Australia, from India to Australia, throughout the islands, over to the Americas. Even if you look at all of that, the amount of years in between, different cultures, different religions are created. And yeah, Frumentius was given permission, and this was for political gain. Once the Council of Nicaea happened, and Constantine's mother, Helena, was given all this permission and she was Christian, King Gazana saw the writing on the wall. He knew that if he wanted to align himself with Rome for trade purposes and political purposes, Christianity was probably the best way to go. And he made a very good educational guess as to which direction the Roman Empire was going to go. And no more than what, just over 100 years later, he was 100% correct when Theodosius made Rome Christian. What are you saying? Just want to say I'm a ARU bloodline out of the Greek southern Iraq. It's weird how Greek is right there in those bloodlines by the Mediterranean. Well, one of the things about the Greeks, part of that Hellenization is to force marriage between their warriors, their army, and the local people. That way, the son is not going to go rebel against the father. Hellenization is a military strategy. It wasn't like we just want to help everybody. This was a strategy. Yes, I do. I do private coaching sessions. Yes, I do. I'm trying to catch up before I continue. Yeah, the Romans thought the Germanic tribes and the Britons were very dirty and only good for slavery and the linings. Ebionites and Igbo Knights don't correlate at all. They have absolutely nothing to do with one another. All right, I think I caught up. Now I've caught up to everybody. It's in the comments. So, where are we? So Ethiopia, Christianity didn't go into Africa first, but even if it did go to Africa first, it wasn't developed in Africa. It wasn't an African religion. Now, a lot of people try to say that, well, the Christianity took a lot from the Egyptians, right? And so because they took from the Egyptian, they stole the Egyptian religion. They took the 10 Commandments from the 42 negative confessions of Ma'at. They took some of the stories. They saw the Akten of Akhenaten, and they took that story. They took the story of Horus, and they made Horus Jesus. And they got so many similarities. And although there are some things that what was that damn show called? It was, although there were some things the zeitgeist got right, there was also a lot that the zeitgeist got wrong. Watching that show, even the first time, I was like, ooh, ah, ooh, ah, ooh, ah. Like, they got some things right, but they were playing to the audience as well. See, and this is one of those where it goes off the rails. The Bible was made out of already existing African histories, Sumerians, Phoenicians, ancient Egyptians, Babylonians. Those are not African people. Those people would not have considered themselves from the land of Africa. It doesn't matter what we think. Those people didn't have any contact with the people of West Africa, no contact with the people of South Africa, no contact with Central Africa. Those people had cultures fully developed on their own in the area that today we call the Middle East. They were completely Mesopotamian societies and had their own religion. They didn't go to Southern Africa and say, "Ooh, look what we learned. Let's take that back." None of that. That's not what happened. And to force them people to fit into your paradigm of they must be African is disrespectful as hell. It would be like if 1,000 years from now, the continent of Africa changes its name and they change all the histories of the people and say, oh, these people were really, they're really Antarcticans because they were originally in Antarctica, but then as Antarctica continued to float southward, they all migrated to Africa. And so they're really Antarcticans. Which, if I want to create a conspiracy theory, that actually would be a good conspiracy theory right there. That all people actually come from Antarctica and they migrated to Africa as it was moving southward and got colder and colder. And they remember the land. If the Garden of Eden story, I know somebody had asked about the Garden of Eden. The Garden of Eden story is most likely, see, this is why you should have been here last week when we talked about the Sumerians and Abraham, because the Garden of Eden story most likely comes from when the Persian Gulf wasn't green, when it was land before the Younger Dryas flood. And the Sumerians kind of created that story based on the Younger Dryas flood and that region being flooded out. My guy, the Euphrates River, the Tigris River, has always been called, it was been called that since the Sumerians were calling it when they were in Sumer. when they had, when you go and you look at their writings on their tablets, not what you want it to be, the writings on their tablets that we found in places like Uruk and and Nineveh, they call the rivers that are still called today the Euphrates and Tigris, the Euphrates and Tigris. The only difference is there was no Persian Gulf, and those rivers joined later down into the Persian Gulf now and flowed to the Indian Ocean, what we call the Indian Ocean, or the sea, the Arabian Sea. They never thought that they were in Egypt. That is a New Age conspiracy theory in order to make the Bible be African, to make the stories of the Bible be African, to make people who believe in this religion and they know better to feel better about it. It is not. The Greeks, the Greeks described what the Euphrates looked like and the whole environment. I wish we could have one-on-one talk one day. You can come on here and talk, but here's the thing: the same description that you can use to describe that is what some of these Black Americans try to use to describe the Mississippi Delta area, and say that the real Euphrates is the Mississippi, or the real Nile actually is the Mississippi River. Most major rivers have that similarity. But it's one thing for you to say what you're saying if there wasn't any evidence that demonstrates that those people back then called those very rivers where we found the writings and the cities. So I want you to think about that. If 10,000 years from now, if you found some writings in modern day New York, but it was all ruins, and they said that this was New York and this is Manhattan Island, are you going to say, nah, that wasn't Manhattan Island? Mm-mm. Over there, Japan is Manhattan Island. That ain't the real Manhattan. Manhattan was Japan. That's what it sounds like. You know what I'm saying? That's what you're doing. And it's all because people who want to hold on to this religion, they want to hold on to it, so they got to make it different than what the Europeans have made the Bible into, and go against any and all histories that they would teach. The overwhelming people of who claim to be Yoruba do not claim to come from the Phoenicians. Most claim to come from Chechua. They do not claim to come from the Phoenicians. The Phoenicians never made it around the neck of Africa. Okay, I'm not going to spend all day on going back and forth with that. So Manu, where are you? What's the geographical location that you're talking about? Are you talking about the flooding that created the Persian Gulf? Because the whole story don't make sense with the Euphrates and all that kind of stuff. It can't be from the reverse, because the Euphrates and the Tigris met underneath what the modern day Persian Gulf and flowed southward into the Arabian Sea. That Arabian Sea area would have to be where it starts from. But it pours down into that area. According to this Genesis story, those rivers came out of the Garden of Eden, which would be up in the mountains of Turkey. So what do you think when they say Noah's Ark had to be built in Florida because that's the only place gopher wood exists? Exactly. So a dude in the 18th century came down there and saw the uh, what is it called, stinky oak wood or stinky pine wood, and he renamed it gopher wood, and so now people are believing that that's where the gopher wood came from. So it had to be in Florida. A dude in the 18th century changed the name of the actual name of the tree starts with a T, and changed the name of it. Oh, I get it. I get what you're saying. The Younger Dryas, yes. And the Younger Dryas flood, it rose sea levels by 400 feet everywhere. Which when you go through, when I went through the strait out of the Arabian Sea into the Persian Gulf, um, the that is the shallowest part. It was still deep as shit, but that's the shallowest part of the Persian Gulf until you get to like a coastline. Okay, so here's the thing. The story is not a true story. That's the thing. Now, what they have seen is that there are ancient riverbeds that are under the Persian Gulf. LIDAR has detected ancient riverbeds under the Persian Gulf. So there were many other unknown rivers that we do not know what those rivers were, where they came from. But based on the flooding of the Persian Gulf, most likely from the um, Younger Dryas flood, the names of those rivers, the other two rivers are probably the Gihon and the Pison, are under the Persian Gulf. But it doesn't make the story true. It doesn't make, if that made the story true, then where my guy Manu on here? If that made the story true, then Manu was told by, I think, Krishna or somebody. I think if Maria's on here can give me the right name. But Manu was Manu the god? But I believe Manu was a dude who was told to, hey, get your family in a boat because it's going to be a flood. That makes that story true. It'll make the government story true. So back to the story, back to the conversation. Many people try to compare the Kushite Egyptian religion because Kushite religion and Egyptian religion have a lot of similarities in gods and the pantheons and things of that nature. But some of the main key points that they try to say are proof that Christianity borrowed from Egypt are the 42 negative confessions of Ma'at. Now, although you can see some of those confessions of Ma'at do match the until you they do match. Wait a minute, hold on. Dude, you're comparing a map that was made in the 1500s. Come on, man. Okay, you rest your case. Good. I would like for you to submit your book for peer review. Submit it for peer review before you put a book like that out. Like if I was writing a book based on the history of Christianity, before I would release it, I would submit it for peer review first. I would not just release it based on what I think. And I'm not telling you to do that so you can to prove you right or wrong. It's for your own credibility that you should do that. You know, you write a book about I'm finishing the book on relationship. I can just put that shit out. But if I'm writing origins of Judaism, I got to get some peer review, or at minimum cite where the information is, cite other writers who went under peer review of where the information is coming from. That way you can hold credibility. So you want to do that. Now, Egypt. Ideas of Egypt. 42 confessions of Ma'at, negative confessions of Ma'at. Sure, you can find some things, but in the same way you can find those things in the negative 42 confessions of Ma'at, you can find it in the Code of Hammurabi. The Code of Hammurabi, you see very similar things to the laws and rituals and commandments that you find in Judaism. So as much as you can claim that it came from one or the other, what you're really looking at is a Mediterranean culture that has similar ideas. Sure, it's more than likely that they piggyback off of definitely the Hammurabi Code, but that is in the same way that you can look at American laws and say that American laws initially, back in the day in the 1700s, American laws were very similar to laws in England. The laws in modern day Mexico were similar to the laws in Spain. The Brazilian laws were similar to the laws in Portugal, because like the slavery laws in Portugal said that if a man has sex with if a white man has sex with a slave and they have a baby and the baby is a boy, then the boy is not a slave or can gain inheritance, but if it's a girl, she can't. That was a Portugal slave law. So they have those similarities. So like-minded people in a general area, and especially those who were conquered by the Babylonians, conquered by the Assyrians, for them, it would have been it's more feasible that they adapted their commandments, their laws, their rituals from the Babylonians, from the Assyrians, and ingratiated themselves with the Hammurabi Code instead of the 42 negative confessions of Ma'at, mainly because they were never in Egypt. The Israelite people, the whole Joseph and his Technicolor coat going to Egypt never happened. Jacob going to Egypt never happened. 237 years of living in Egypt and prospering never happened. The Exodus with Moses never happened. So them adapting things from Egypt because they spent 400 years plus in Egypt, it never happened. But were they under Assyrian captivity? Were they under Babylonian captivity? And were they under that captivity at the time frame that their religion really started developing? Yes. Prior to that, they were just like any other Canaanite people. They were just like any other Canaanite people. Now, was the idea of the Aten borrowed from the Israelite people? Absolutely not. The most likely candidate of where the Israelite people gained the idea of true monotheism would not have come from the Aten and Akhenaten, because Akhenaten occurred. The Hyksos could be, once they got their ass kicked and got kicked out of Egypt, they may have joined. They may have joined with the Canaanite people, but there is not a direct connection to the Hyksos, to the Canaanite people that will become the Hebrews. They could have become any part of the Canaanite. You got to remember, Canaanite is a big group of people. Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, Jebusites, all the ites are Canaanite people. When the Hyksos got kicked out of Egypt, they could have become part of any of those groups. Now, the Canaanite people were, up until around 1180 BCE, controlled by Egypt. But that is not when Judaism developed. Judaism didn't develop until around 800, 900, somewhere between 1000 and 800 is when they first separated themselves from the other Canaanite people. Well, no, sorry. When they first separated themselves from the other Canaanite people would have been around the 1300s, but truly didn't become their own people until around 1900 BCE, And then the separation of the religion didn't really start happening until around 800 BCE. But they would have, it's possible that they had some Hyksos mixture. It's possible that they had some Shashu mixture, some Mennonite mixtures. Because the Canaanite religion of worshiping Yahweh, I mean, Yahweh or El or Baal, those were prominent throughout the Saudi Peninsula, up into in Mesopotamia, out towards Iran, Iraq, and on up north in towards Turkey, because they all developed that from being under the Akkadian and Sumerians, who had Enlil that becomes El, who had Baal that becomes Marduk. So they had all of that. Right. And Canaanites are some of the people that became Phoenicians by the Greeks, and the same were later renamed Moor and Moor. Canaanite people have become a whole bunch of people, except they were never the West Africans or Sub-Saharan Africans. Canaanites were never West Africans or Sub-Saharan Africans. That has never happened. What's your proof? What's your proof? The Phoenicians never sailed to West Africa. They never sailed along the coast around the Horn of Africa. So no, there was never this mass. The farthest exodus that any of the tribes of Egypt made happened around 70 CE, when Titus reconquered Judea, put down the revolts, and many of them were sold into slavery in Egypt at that time frame, but they were sold all over the Roman Empire. So they were sold throughout northern Africa, throughout the Mediterranean area in its totality. There's the myth of them crossing the Sahara Desert into West Africa. West Africa, and Central Africa, but it never happened. There are people down there who claim it, but they have no actual proof. Is Atlantis the home of the Phoenicians? We've never found Atlantis. Atlantis, if it did exist, it would have been destroyed during the Younger Dryas flood. The Phoenicians mainly made their home for a while in the southern Levant, closer to the Sinai Peninsula. They were also the ones who went across and merged with some of the Barbers, what we call Barbers, and became the Tunic people. They were part of the sea people that floated all around through some of the Eastern Greek Isles and into Turkey and all that area. I don't know of any archaeologist that's ever nailed down the primary home of the Phoenicians, other than for a while they were in what's called southern Israel. The Moors were a mixture of Moabites, Phoenicians, etc., as well, right? Then later moving throughout North and West Africa. A little bit more than that, because there are centuries of differences before you really get Moors. Moors really, you get so many mixtures of people that creates the Arabs, and then out of the Arabs you really get the Moors, and then the Moors captured and conquered a lot of other people, and they became Moors, and when they converted to Islam. I've never heard anybody say that Atlantis was in Nigeria. It'd be interesting. But some of these stories, these Egyptian stories, the Aten, that's where I was at. So Akhenaten was in around 1400 BCE, and the Hebrew people didn't come to a true idea of monotheism until around the 2nd century. So you got 15th century BCE, and they don't come to a truer monotheism until around the 2nd century BCE. So we're looking at 1200 years of difference. They didn't pick that up from Akhenaten. They started picking that up from the Persians, from the Zoroastrians, is where they started picking up the ideas of that. So they didn't pull from Akhenaten, so that doesn't come from Egypt. The story of Horus, Horus is the sun god for it becomes the sun god for the Egyptians, represented by the sun. The son of Osiris and Isis, or Asar and Set. It is said that for his birth, this is before his death, but for his birth, his mother floated over the resurrected body of Asar, where she put a Washington Monument phallic symbol on it, and for his penis, because a crocodile had eaten that, and she floated over it and became pregnant in order to birth out Horus. And this birth happened on the 25th of December, when the sun started moving a little bit further north and the days start becoming a little bit longer. The story is a complete astrotheology story. It has nothing to do with Jesus, the Jesus story. It's an amazing conception, but it is not the same immaculate conception. The Hercules story is closer to a Jesus story as far as the birth than the Horus story or the Hebrew story. So they did not pull that from the Egyptians. So it's just not an African story. And at that time frame in the 1st century, the people in Ethiopia, or the DMT, so the Axiom Empire, the DMT, the people in Yemen, which were called the Sabians or something like that, they had a polytheistic worship. They had many gods. They were doing ancestry venerations. They were doing all sorts of other religions. Animism was still part of their religion. They were not, in any shape or form, of any of the people that would have had contact with the Romans or with the Hebrew people. They were not participating in any religion that looked like Christianity, even the old Christianity, because Christianity today don't look like Christianity 2,000 years ago. So Christianity does not come out of Africa. Its roots are not out of Africa. Its roots are not out of Egypt. It's not out of Ethiopia. It's not out of anywhere near Africa. Christianity's roots are out of a Roman story to get rid of Judaism, and Judaism roots are, and that is based, and that story is based on Judaism and the expectation of Judaism. And Judaism is based in Canaanite religion, which is based in Akkadian and Sumerian religion. It doesn't come from Europe at all, and neither does it come from Africa. There has never been this great African unity. Never. Never has the whole of Africa believed in one thing, even to this day. North Africa is primarily Muslim. Southern Central Africa and Southern and Central Africa is mostly Christian. They have never been united in thought. So this is a sad idea that people are walking around trying to force it, instead of just following the information wherever it goes. And where the information goes for Christianity is that based on trying to shut down Judaism, a Hellenistic Jew was ordered by the Roman emperor to start writing a story. That story then turns into a legendized story, and other Mediterranean people pick up on the story and write more and create more. Just like you got all these other Gospel of Thomas and Gospel of Mary Magdalene and the secret writings of James, the secret writings of Peter, people in first, second, third century, even into the fourth century, were writing all kinds of stories about this Jesus character and trying to make their version of Christianity. The first canon that we actually see is the Marcion canon. And there was even a Gospel of Marcion, which many scholars today are starting to think that Luke is actually the Gospel of Marcion expanded upon. So the answer to the question is no, it is not. There is not enough evidence to demonstrate that. And when you say I need to listen to the African oral stories, see, that's what you can't say. Which African oral stories? The Ashanti, the Zulu, the Yoruba, the Igbo, the Mali, the Dogons? Which story? Because if I listen to the Dogons have zero connection to any of these people. And they knew they knew about the star Sirius and Sirius B, and that there's planets going around Sirius B long before anybody did. Right. Listen to this grouping to make it seem like oneness is so falsified. You got 20, like my man Manu said, you got 20 different versions of Star Trek. We talking about Kirk, Picard, Janeway, Deep Space Nine, because I can't remember the guy who was in charge of that one. Discovery. I did like Discovery. Discovery was good. You had time travel in it, so I liked it. You got to be specific. Got one more in the bag. Look at the face of the Sphinx. Look at the face of the Sphinx, my brother. It can only be found in southwest of Nigeria, the religion where millions have that face. Same with the archaeologists. Do you know that many scholars suggest that the original face of the Sphinx was the god Anubis, and then it was later changed to a man's face, because the Sphinx is at minimum about 25,000 years old. It could have gone under many reconstructions, and we just don't know. But many say it was Anubis's face, a jackal, the face of a jackal first. And facial recognition, I don't necessarily go off that. In one day, in one scroll on my Facebook, I saw a dude take the Olmecs and have an African dude on there, and he looked like him. Then keep scrolling. There's another dude who had the same Olmec head, and there's a Hispanic dude who looks just like him. And then you scroll some more, and then somebody had a East Coast Native American that looked just like him. Facial structures, there's not a lot of different facial structures in the world. Well, the body of the Sphinx is a lion. Now, there are some who theorize that the entire thing, the face of it, was also a lion representing the age of Leo 25,000 years ago, in the last great year. Not this current great year, but the previous great year. Yeah, the jury is still out on it being the face of Anubis before it was changed into a man's face. Oh, crypto talking to somebody else. Uh, people, you do know that when they colonized Nigeria, they took a whole bunch of y'all history and put it into their museums. There were many countries that had bronze in it. That was the whole Bronze Age because many cultures had bronze. Lana said the Sphinx had interchangeable head pieces. You know, that's like saying, oh, they had gold over here. Well, a whole bunch of people had gold at different time frames. It's a common element. I mean, it's rare but common. What countries had bronze during the Bronze Age? Hmm. They had it in Mesopotamia. They had it in Greece, in Egypt, in China, in the Indus Valley, in Pakistan. Are you trying to say that bronze was only found in Nigeria? Come on, man. You can't believe that. That the only place bronze has ever been found was in. I mean, you had bronze all up into. Uh, you had bronze that was in Europe. They had bronze. Greece had bronze. Syria had bronze. And Nigeria is not the only place that you find bronze. Where in the world can you find bronze naturally? Oh, well, my bad. I asked the wrong question. Where in the world can you find copper and tin naturally? Because bronze is not a natural element. So you can find it in Chile, Peru, Democratic Republic of Congo, the United States has huge amounts of copper. You can find tin in Asia, China, all throughout South America, in Malaysia, Vietnam, Brazil, Bolivia. You can find tin in Nigeria and parts of Russia. Are there copper mines in Nigeria? See? And it didn't say Nigeria had copper, so I just asked the question more directly. But Nigeria have copper mines. 10 places where you can find copper mines and tin mines. So Chile has both copper and tin. Peru has, no, wait. Yeah, Peru has both copper and tin. China has both, well, no, yeah, China has both copper and tin. So anywhere where you have copper or tin, or you have a neighbor that has one, has the other, you can have bronze, hence the entire Bronze Age. And we're going to Chile, Indonesia, the DRC, Australia, Mexico, Russia. It's everywhere, man. It's in a lot of places. What's the difference between the sophistication of the artwork and the Greeks using bronze to make shields and spears? The people in Levant using it to make weapons, to make pottery. Culture determines what you're going to utilize these materials for. One utilizing it for one reason and another, somebody else for another, doesn't make it where somebody else could not have had it. I just went online and looked up who has copper and tin. My God, come on. See, this is where, and well, this is where you got to be open to information. Bronze is made out of copper and tin. So then, if you research ancient copper and tin, where those were, you generally have a Bronze Age. Those people generally went through a Bronze Age or utilized bronze, and then countries near them that may not have produced it themselves would have had access through trade. I understand Wool's mentality now. This is the mentality that creates the question by which we're speaking of today. And there's no disrespect to you, but when you want to force, this is kind of like how America is. America want to be the greatest country in the world. It wants everything, anything great in the world got to come out of America. Got to be an American thing. We the greatest. Woo! And many people do that with ancient history to make their current seem like it was great. We started this, we did that. And we make claims that cannot be validated. Your whole thing about the Bronze Age is completely invalid. And then you counter that with statements like this one. But who did the Greeks learn from? Who inhabited ancient Greece before the modern Greeks came on the scene? Well, the Greeks themselves say that they learned from the Egyptians and from the people in Mesopotamia. Pythagoras, for one. Pythagoras, when the Greek Isle of Croton was still behind the times, he went to Mesopotamia, learned there, and then he went to Egypt and learned there, and then he went back to Croton and started his school and developed the Greek Croton society. Were these people darker than what they are now? Sure, I'll give you that. Mesopotamian people in general were darker. But does that make them Nigeria? It does not. It makes them closer to North African and Mediterranean. Well, they're Mediterranean. They were brown people. I give you that they were brown people. But what does that matter? And I don't, okay, I know this might be your first time meeting me. I don't read history books. I read archaeological papers and PhD papers. I don't read history books. History books are written by the victors. How Christianity wasn't a copy of Egypt. One, there's the lack of contact with Egypt in the sense of when the religion was created. Let me not say lack of contact. So, as I've explained many times before, the Canaanite people came out of the Mesopotamia. They came out of the Sumerians and Akkadian people, separated themselves from them somewhere in around 1500 BCE. Then in around 1300 BCE, separated themselves around 2000 BCE, 2000, 2100 BCE. Then somewhere around 1300 BCE, a new group of Canaanites separated themselves and called themselves Hebrews. Those Hebrews didn't find themselves individually or didn't start developing their religion until around 900, somewhere between 1000 and 800 BCE. But their main influence, because the Egyptians had been kicked out of the Levant around that time frame and the Bronze Age collapse had happened, their religion adopted more a separation from the Canaanite religion and took on the certain Assyrian aspects, then certain Babylonian aspects, and then the Persian aspects of it. But they weren't Egyptian. They're not part of the Octen. That was too far ahead. They were not part of the Hyksos. So the Hyksos and the Shashu might have integrated with them, but their religion did not take over. My camera's doing that faded thing again. And the stories just don't match up. You have some aspects of the story that may seem similar, but they are too far away from each other to be considered connected when the connections are easily seen through the Mesopotamian religions. According to the Bible, Canaanites were known as evil people, but they're all Canaanites. And the Canaanites come out of the Sumerians and Akkadians, which is why Abraham is claimed to come from the city of Ur. But the story of Abraham is really that time frame that they separated from the other Canaanites and tried to claim their own religion. But this story doesn't even start as an oral tradition until somewhere around the 900s and 800s. And it's not even written down until the 500s and 400s. Why is this camera? Come on now, get your act together. It's getting on my nerves. Fine, I just come forward. Equal to description. Yeah, that camera. I don't know why this camera does that. So when I figure out this algorithm for Facebook again, and it gets moving like it was last year, I'm gonna get one of the things is to get a new camera, because this camera is getting on my nerves. But yeah, and as far as Canaanites being an evil group, that's only because the Bible says so. I'm sure the Canaanites say that the Israelites were evil. You know, any group that separates or is against another group is always going to say they're evil. It's just like you got black people running around saying all white people are evil, and you got white people running around saying all black people are evil. That's the problem with separation. That's the problem of being on a lower vibrational thought. This is why each individual person needs to be known for their individuality. And although there are certain cultural things that we can see as a culture, most of the things that are claimed to be cultural are just, most of the negative things that are claimed about a people generally aren't negative, except towards the people that suffered under that negativity. You know, Republicans say Democrats are evil. Democrats say Republicans are evil. Independents, like myself, say both of y'all evil. Do you believe before the gods arrived on Earth that there might have been only women that walked on this Earth, XX chromosome, before the XY chromosome arrived through the gods? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. One, I don't believe the gods ever arrived on Earth. That's the first part. But the second part to that is that, what is it called? Homeostasis? Humans, that homeogenesis. Homeogenesis at the highest level can only happen in lizards. It cannot happen in mammals. It's never happened in mammals, cannot happen in mammals. So if you had a planet full of women, the human race would die, plain and simple. Uh, there was a series I was watching a while back called Y, and it was the letter Y. And basically every male animal on the planet died except for this one man and this one little monkey that he had. And the world went to hell in a handbasket. And they were trying to get to this one man, but no births were happening. If you had a world full of women, the society would die in one generation. That one generation, and that's it. You dead. When that generation gets old and die, everybody's done. We done. But I don't. The Anunnaki story is just as mythological as the Christian story. So women can't make a baby without a man, and a man can't make a baby without a woman. You got to have both. So, and I know some of that comes from the idea of the fact that, and this is actually a misunderstanding of biology. Well, in the womb, everybody is a girl first before they become a boy, right? That's the storyline. That's the thing that people get stuck on. But here's the thing: if the sperm has XY chromosome and there's no defects, but the sperm is either going to have XX chromosome or XY chromosome. Now, if there's a defect, yeah, you might get a hermaphrodite. But if it has an XY chromosome, it goes into the egg, it starts doing its thing. The Y chromosome hadn't yet asserted itself. This is why they say we all start female, so the genitalia hadn't started and all that sort of thing. But that baby has no choice but to come out XY chromosome. Unless there's some type of defect, it's going to be XY chromosome. It's going to be male. Biologically, it's going to be male. It's not going to be anything else. You know, there was a comment I made last night, Heel, and I'm glad you weren't here for me because I would have to tell you to be quiet, just like I told Sean, Tim, and Trauma that they couldn't say anything about a comment that I made last night. That you two. Well, it took my twins' water to mix together to even make slime and mud, which would be masculinity. Huh? I'm not quite sure I understand what you're talking about. I have no idea. I'm trying to think through what you're saying, but I don't understand that at all. Okay, maybe this will explain it more. Well, the only reason that your sperm can even enter is the fact that you let out a liquid to coat our walls to protect your sperm so we don't kill it. It's foreign to a woman's body, the XY chromosome. And a lot of scientists say it's a mutation. They really don't even know where it came from. And I would say those scientists are quacks. Not understanding how the body works or trying to create something because of a foreign thing. When you kiss a man, his saliva is a foreign object in your body at that point. When a man penetrates a woman and some of her fluids go into his little pee hole, that's a foreign object into his body because it's not naturally of his own body. Anytime something goes in there, it's a foreign object. But we are genetically made to reproduce, and the only way we can do that is to have sex. And the only way a woman can get the sperm necessary to make a woman or a man is to be with a man. It ain't gonna happen any other way. And I'm not trying to be rude, but two women can scissor all day and some juices can go in, can swap, but they ain't producing shit. They're not going to produce a baby. It's just never going to happen. Damn near every mammal on the planet is male, female, and they have to get it. They got to do the shakalaka boom boom in order to produce. And your bodies are designed to produce. And all that coding and all this stuff is specifically more designed to make sure the strongest possible reproduction happens. And when you look at the world population, it's about 50-50 man and woman. See, I knew somebody. Eric. See, I left your name out of the group that I can't say certain stuff, but Eric slipped in there. Yeah. Food is is a foreign object. You realize that we create the whole gender war, the whole sexuality war, and a lot of that is created because, yeah, if I'm a woman and the majority of the world is following these religions, which makes women seem subservient, I'm going to attach myself to something that makes women seem greater than the man. Because for the last, what, 6 to 12,000 years of known history, women have been put into the back seat. So I understand women who want to say the woman is God, the woman is better, the woman is stronger. And because of how society has been for the last 1,000 years, almost 1,000 years, yeah, no, I can't say 1,000 years, for the last 600 plus years, I can understand why Black people or any person of color wants to say, no shit, we're better, we're greater, we started this, we did this and that and this and third. Because you're on the side where you're looking up the mountain and you got a big ass backpack and all these other motherfuckers are climbing the mountain and they don't have nothing on their back. So I get it. But just because that's our current history for the last 400 years for men, for Black people or people of color, it doesn't necessarily, that doesn't make, you don't have to lean into that. Yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna read this whole thing. But because you believe in some gods, that in itself says a lot because it's a belief. You would have to first prove these gods. Who are these gods that you're talking about? Are you talking about the Anunnaki? Are you talking about the lizard people of the Dogon? Are we talking about Brahma and Krishna? And uh, are we talking about the feathered serpent? What gods? That we certainly agree. We agree on. Well, Jesus is the biggest lie ever told. And I understand. I preached it, but I wasn't a preacher. I was a deacon. But I understand. We definitely agree on that. All the above. Okay. See those to prove. Ooh, I wish you was here, Brandy. Was that last night we was talking about this? Yeah, you should have been here last night, Brandy. Yesterday's live, we went all over that stuff, and it's still early in my Facebook scroll, you know. But we talked a lot about that yesterday, and I gave my viewpoint on it based on as much scientific evidence and knowledge that we have after 1 hour. But I first discussed the other religion first for the first hour, just so if you want to skip to where I'm talking about my thoughts and kind of what I follow. So, and I talked for like an hour, so I'm not going to go over all that right now. But I would implore you, you know, it would have been good conversation yesterday, not today. I would love to read it. Would love to read it. Would greatly appreciate it. It is windy as hell. Sorry. Hmm. All right. So y'all know the rules of the show. So if you got some other questions and statements or subject matters you want to talk about, you know the rules of the show. Once this gets too hot for me to hold and pull on, the show is over. Plus, since I didn't make any videos today, I still kind of want to make some videos after we finish. Somebody, I don't know who said it. They asked about a video I dropped yesterday. I dropped earlier today. I didn't drop any videos today, but so I'm assuming it's a yesterday video. Um, you're going to have to be specific. Let me see. Yesterday, yesterday. Oh, sorry. Oh, so I did a video about the 12 tribes of Israel coming from a dysfunctional family, and I talked about Lilith yesterday. So yesterday was about Lilith and the dysfunctional family that the 12 tribes came from. So you have to be specific. Don't know which one you're talking about. And I forgot who said it. Um, I don't know if this was meant for me or for someone else. Obayopo. I hope I'm saying that right. If the Arabs are claiming that they are ancient Egyptians, do you think they would not have attacked the rest of Africa for ages? No. Okay, so from a military standpoint, attacking Ethiopia is treacherous because of the mountain ranges. Attacking other parts of Africa is treacherous because of crossing the Sahara Desert. We struggle today if we wanted to mount an offensive that have to cross the Sahara or even the mountains of Ethiopia. Of Ethiopia. Look at how we struggle in Afghanistan because of the mountains. So at that time, at any time frame of the Arabs, for them to cross the Sahara, nah, or even to try to voyage all the way to Southern Africa, it just wouldn't have been worth it for them. If that question was for me, I'm not sure if it was for me. I see Hill want to get banned. Hill, you want to get banned, don't you? You want to get banned. No, Trey Young is staying in Atlanta. He's getting help now. He's gonna get some more help. We would literally be probably fifth seed right now if Jalen would not have gotten hurt. Jalen doesn't get hurt, we're fifth seed. The Pacers are sixth, and Detroit is in the play-in. And you know it. And you know it. Don't be talking about my team like that. I'm gonna have to. I'm gonna have to fight here. And we won tonight. Now, how about that? Right? Mercurial lore. If Africans created religion and spirituality, how would you utilize it as a filter? And do you think that there is a future paradigm for both through African communalism and science? I'm not even sure I understand what you're saying. If Africans can, so with the out of Africa theory, or that I see as more facts than anything else, the religion that would have been carried out of Southern Africa, say 125,000 years ago, as cultures develop, those religions would change and would be as far and away from each other as Christianity is to Shinto. So let's say an African religion developed in the interior of Africa around lakes, rivers, mountains, and waterfalls. Those religions would have developed based on gods of the sky, gods of the waterfall, gods of the mountains, and so on and so forth. But as they migrate and they get to oceans, all of a sudden they're ocean gods. They get to the desert, they're desert gods. So the culture would have developed gods based on the surroundings that they have. Even the stars are now different because now they're in the northern hemisphere instead of the southern hemisphere. The weather patterns are different, southern hemisphere, northern hemisphere. So the gods would have all changed. The religion would have constantly changed. They would have saw different animals. You go from seeing the animals in the Central Africa to seeing the animals in the desert. It's just like me coming here to San Antonio. They got this weird ass whistling bird. So I would have been like, these birds are calling to some whistling god, some bird god, instead of in Atlanta where we got crows and shit. So it would have developed differently. So you wouldn't be able to really filter it. The only thing you would be able to say is that they all would have developed differently and then taken on more attributes of what they saw. And what was the other part of that question? Oh, I'm not even sure that question was for me now. Oh, and the reason why you asked that because Europeans and Arabs are both trying to claim ancient Egypt with their racism, wouldn't you think they would? Oh, girl, that's something I would answer. I thought the one came before the other. Oh. And I think this is crazy. I saw a lot of Africans trying to associate themselves with the 12 tribes. It because it's popular. Because it's popular, and there's more people. People are sheep. Whatever more people are saying is true is what people will try to follow, and then because they want to make it their own, they'll make their little changes. Oh, Mercurial. I guess what I'm saying is how that can that be utilized in the future? Shit, I forgot the question. I wish I could like isolate a person and then it shows me just what they asked. Oh, Africans do that. Oh, how can that be utilized in the future? It should be utilized to recognize that all of these were just folk stories and tales and mythologies, and that none of them actually exist, and that they just didn't have the understanding of science that we have today. Uh, and then walk away from all these religions. I don't even say we should go back to African ancestral religion. Now, I'll tell a person who just has to have a religion, go back to that one if you can't really look at what's real and what's not. But go back to that one. At least you can say your ancestors have been doing that one forever. So here I created another channel called Stogies and Hoops. Stogies and Hoops. I talk about basketball in general, but Stogies and Hoops. And hell no to that trade. Nobody wants that albatross that contract with Bradley Beal. That contract is horrible. I hear that when you elevate your higher spiritual levels, that you will be less afraid of hell and fully deconstructed from religion. And you will. And in that last hour that I taught last night, that's what I talked about. That's one of the main things I talked about in the last hour of last night's live. When you elevate your consciousness, you will not be, you lose the emotional attachments that people have for these religions. And you literally become free. Free from all religion. You don't even need to formulate a new religion. So how did Christianity go from outside of Egypt to Italy as its base of power? So although Christianity was growing in each one of those at the same time, it was in the earlier second century, there was more of a power. It had more power in Egypt and Judea, but because Vespasian, I mean, because Constantine had Orthodox Christians in his army. Maxentius had a bunch of Christians in his army because he was coming from the east. Constantine knew that he had to please the army, and so he had to please all the Christians that was in the Roman military. That is why the Council of Nicaea, that's one of the other reasons why he had to organize it in Rome. And so it was Constantine. Is this also true when we say, for example, you learn about Egyptian spirituality? To a certain extent. The Egyptian spirituality that focused on alchemy, hermeticism, yes. The Egyptian gods and all that kind of stuff, no. You see that clock? You see that clock? You see that clock? You see the cigar? I see y'all are arguing amongst each other. Agreed, Brandy. Agreed. And even to that level of existence, it's only because you allow it. Only because you allow it. When you strip away the constructs that man has created in their lower vibrational mindsets, it all fades away. Yes, the great goal of every society, there's always been those in every society that push forward the great goal of enlightenment. And even in some of their enlightenments, they were held back by religion. Last night I talked about how people like John Dees was still held back by religion. Even your Plato, Socrates, all of these people were still held back by religion. Your different pharaohs and people like Imhotep were held back by religion. Even you have to get to a person to the level of Lao Tzu, if he ever existed, to not be held by religion. One of the greatest things that Lao Tzu supposedly wrote in the Tao was that once he understood the way, he no longer needed Buddhism. And basically what he was inferring is that once you get into the flow of the universe, the understanding of how the universe actually functions, getting into frequency, vibration, and energy, you no longer need any religion. And for him, that religion was Buddhism. So if Lao Tzu is a real person, but at least the wisdom of that writing is there, you no longer need any of those things. And yes, you can create your heaven and hell on earth through positive or negative actions and thoughts and words. But what goes greater beyond that is when you elevate your consciousness to where there is no concept of that period. And you maintain the cohesion of your consciousness after you leave the existence of this body and you manifest in a totally different plane of existence, devoid of the hindrances of this existence, realizing the foolishness of all the positive, negative thoughts that we've had on this planet, that we've had in this existence, I should say. I'm not, please don't abandon the channel when Tatum sweep y'all. Would I rather, ooh, that might be a good video tomorrow. Who would you rather face in the first round? Cleveland Cavaliers or Boston? Probably Cleveland. I ain't gonna abandon the channel, my guy. It allows me an opportunity to talk about another subject matter that I like. Yep. I missed my game tonight because of y'all. But that generally happens once or twice a week anyway. Beauty of highlights. I'm with you. I just call the soul the consciousness, your consciousness. Because upon exiting this body, your consciousness is the only thing that's going to exit, which if you can call that the soul. But does the soul have a voice? Does the soul have thought? Right. Okay. So we're in agreement. You can't have blasphemy to something that don't exist. I can't blaspheme a God that don't exist. I can just state that he doesn't exist and he's not real. And you cannot prove that he is. There's a part of me that wishes that this Yahweh Jesus character would show up right here. Because I got some mad questions I want to ask this dude. Because if you are real, you a fucked up person. You a fucked up God. You the worst God. You one of the worst gods ever created. I got my coffee. I've been sipping the coffee. Oh my gosh. Don't y'all love this? We are proof. Yes, and the Muslims say that we are proof of Allah. A Buddhist would say, a Hindu would say we are proof of Brahma and Shita. We are proof of the feathered serpent. We are proof. It is so funny when they say that, because that same argument can be used for almost every religion that's ever been created. We are proof because Odin made us. I don't care how many gods any religion have. It doesn't matter. Yet they're not proof of any of them. There's zero proof. Nature is not a proof of a divine being, a consciousness. It is not proof of that. As much as you can point to perfections, that what we call perfections in nature, we also can point to as much destruction and chaos in nature. Exactly, Sean. We are proof of the spaghetti monster, the flying spaghetti monster on Saturn. That's what we are proof of, the flying spaghetti monster on Saturn. Leave your plume serpent alone. Now, see, they love that one too. You can't have a creator without a creation without a creator. You can't have a plant without a painting without a painter. You can't have a sculpture without a sculptor. So you bring your God down to human levels of consciousness. The universe has always existed. There is no beginning of the universe, just as there is no end, because there is no beginning or end of energy. There is no beginning or end of frequency. There is no beginning or end of matter. It is as eternal as anything else. You know, their arguments, I find them to be of the weak mind. Oh, wait. Where'd that go? Say it again, Brandy. Say it again. There is no God outside yourself. When you realize you are all pure energy source, everything around us is plasma, pixels, and ether. And Christians don't even realize, they should realize it, but they don't really realize they are worshiping a storm deity in Yahweh. They are worshiping Enlil in El. They're worshiping a Mesopotamian religion, a Mesopotamian god, the Sumerian god, the Arcadian gods. Oh my God. What part of I am not going to look it up. What part of Isaiah 11 has been fulfilled today? I can tell you today, Isaiah 11 have been fulfilled. What there was a who was it? I'm trying to think of who said it, but somebody said if you make 1,000 predictions, you are bound to get a certain percentage of them right. Just like Nostradamus, you can extrapolate some of his uh, predictions to be right. Young man, what are you talking about? Who called you here? Keep saying you called me here. Who the hell are you talking to? Did somebody call young man and say, hey man, you need to get on live? And if so, you ain't said nothing of substance. Just keep saying, you called me here. You called me here. I'm listening. Focus on one man. I'm here. I'm trying to stay at peace. But don't nobody tell me what I need to do in my lives. I do whatever the hell I want to do. You still haven't explained your Isaiah 11 prophecy. Isn't that just like, remember last night, the little Christian dude, Jericho, just couldn't answer a question, a simple question? I told him. David's son. Oh my gosh. Why do Bible believers, they practice this vague bullshit and they swear up and down they're doing something. Oh, David's son. That group right there, that been fulfilled. Here he is, hand shit. I wonder if that's the dude who posted one time that he just destroyed me. And I'm like, I never talked to you before. What the hell are you talking about? I know, like, this is what it sounds like to me. Like, who are you talking to? You never don't pull no strings here. But just for shits and giggles, let's look it up. Since he's incapable of being specific. And I thought we said test the spirit. Your spirit of your God has been tested, and he has been found wanting. Oh, hold on. I don't use that version. Come out of stump jazz. cow and the bear shall graze. That shit ain't happening. When is the cow and the bear gonna graze? That doesn't prove Jesus. That just talks about people making they just making a prophecy. But you have decided that that prophecy is of Jesus. And just because you decided that that prophecy is of Jesus doesn't necessarily mean that it is Jesus. Because you first have to be able to prove that Jesus actually existed as the biblical version of Jesus. And the biblical version of Jesus did not exist. I'm just looking at what this joke is talking about, because I think I'm on the right track, but I want to make sure first. Okay, so I thought so. I thought so, but I just have to remind myself. Where that little fella at? Where little fella at? Where young man at? Where that little fella at? I'm sorry I haven't been reading you guys stuff. Now, see, this is what Christians like to do. This is what Christians like to do. What the fuck? My brother, you asked for Jesus to show up. He's my grandfather, and I'm his seed. I am the one that will lead you. David Koresh. I know I'm in San Antonio, but Waco is right up the street. It's about 2 hours up the street. David Koresh is in the house, y'all. Now, see, this is one of those things that Christians love to do. This is how they try to insert, you know what, this will be a good video right after I finish this. They try to insert their Jesus into the Old Testament in order to validate their Jesus. Now, when the writers of the New Testament were writing, there were some of the writings that purposely did this to try to make Jesus fit into the Old Testament. But they made cardinal mistakes in doing so for what I would say is a lack of understanding or hoping that people wouldn't recognize it. So this whole thing that he's talking about for Isaiah chapter 11, you can't start at Isaiah chapter 11. Now, he already messed the whole thing up because now he's claiming to be Jesus. So we already know he's David Koresh over here. But you have to go all the way back to Isaiah 11. Isaiah 7 is when this whole prophecy starts. And this is the part that they don't want you to go and look at. They just want you to see this one part that kind of fits their Jesus motif, but it doesn't still fit. Because in Isaiah chapter 7, when Isaiah is talking to Azah for the sign of Emmanuel, in verse 14, it says very clearly, therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Look, the young woman is with child and will bear a son, and his name shall his name be Isaiah. What you have to recognize is that Isaiah is talking about the young woman is already with child. Not the young woman will be with child, but she is with child, meaning she's pregnant right now. She's pregnant. And many say that this is, most biblical scholars who are not apologists recognize that this is the next king of Israel that they're talking about at that time frame, which, oh shit, I forgot whose name that is, which person that is. But this ain't about Jesus. This ain't about Mary. This is what Christians, because Israel didn't free themselves from the Assyrians and their Messiah didn't come during the time frame of the Assyrian, when it was conquered by the Assyrians, then they said, oh, must be talking about the future. Must be talking about the future. And Jesus didn't come from the stock of David, because Jesus' daddy is supposed to be this God, and Mary doesn't come from the stock of David. Mary, who is a cousin to Elizabeth, their family line comes from the stock of Aaron, which does not go through the stock of David. It goes through Aaron, the Levites. So no, Mary is not in the line. So Jesus that don't work. Doesn't work. Doesn't work. And look at this fool. I just read your scripture. I just read it. You just don't like what it say. You just don't like what it say. And then he tells him, I'm here. Dude, okay, if you're Jesus, young man, as you call yourself, if you're Jesus, show up right here. Come on. Give me some shing-a-ling-a-ling right here. Show up in the presence. Right here. Right here. Come on. And Constantine didn't invent Christianity. You don't even know the history of the religion of the book that you even talking about. You don't even know the history of the book you talking about, dude. Show up. Come on, young man. You Jesus. Your grandfather. You the seed. There's plenty of room in this room. Come on in. Come on in. Okay, I'm gonna make it an easy one. You got 5 seconds. Make my hat fall off my head. I'm gonna give you a little time for the delay of the thing, of the video thing. That should be enough time for the delay. Hat didn't fall. Oh. Come on. If you are the Messiah, do the shit that I just said do. If you the Messiah, I got this pain in my shoulder, been having it for a little while. Can you make it go away? You got that healing power? Oh my gosh, these jokers. But they don't even want to accept what's actually the historicity of their book. And no pastor is going to really teach you that in your churches or your Bible readings, or even when you read it. If you just read the Bible straight out, you should see it, but you're not, because you've already got the predetermined mindset that Isaiah 11 is talking about Jesus. But it wouldn't just be Isaiah 11. It'd be Isaiah 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. But Isaiah 7 clearly says that the woman is with child. The young woman is with child. It does not say she's going to be with child. A young woman will be with child. It says she is with child. So it was talking about somebody who was pregnant right then. I know, right? I got the wrong shirt on. I needed my lying-ass liar shirt. And what's funny is I actually started to wear the lying-ass liar shirt. It amazes me. And this is something that is very common with Christianity, is trying to renegotiate the Old Testament to fit into Christianity. In all actuality, if Christians did study the history of their religion, they will find that the overwhelming majority of people in the late first century and early second century, all the way up to the 4th century, were Gnostics and believed that the Old Testament was speaking of an evil God and not talking about the God of the Jesus character. So Christianity today, that has negotiated to make it all one, is actually a Roman synthesis. But even these people who believe this book today deny the fact that it was a Roman synthesis and want to say that it is all one thing because they have been indoctrinated into believing that it is all speaking with one voice when it is completely not speaking with one voice. Even the Old Testament within itself is not speaking with one voice, and the New Testament certainly is not speaking with one voice. But they try to force it. They have to force it. It's the only way they can keep it. And they have to have it. And this is their delusion, is that they have to make this book fit. And this joker is going as far as being David Koresh up here. I'm Jesus. I'm the seed. I'm the seed. Young man. Come on, young man, appear in the sky to every man on earth. Let's have a day of Pentecost. Can you Pentecost everything right now? Come on, man. Come on, young man. Pentecost everything right now. Speak in a language and everybody understands it in their own language. Show me some of that Pentecostal power that you got. Show me the Holy Spirit. Go into a hospital and heal everybody. Go heal all them. You know what? Go to the Shriners Hospital. Is the Shriners Hospital? Yeah, that's the kids' hospital. Go to the Shriners Hospital. I think it's in Indiana or Indianapolis. Go and heal all those children. Heal all them children. Go heal all them children. Jesus did not fulfill the roles of the Messiah. Dude, I can write a story. I can write a story now and make a person fulfill anything that I believe that what that story is about. But Isaiah 7 says that a young woman was already pregnant. Can't do nothing about that. You can call me anything you want to call me. And if you're the one that said you came on my live and destroyed me, I see no destruction. No, not Jesus. David is the matter of fact. My name is Robert David Jr. That means absolutely nothing. You can probably trace your family to some other country. Oh man, you know I needed a little chuckle. I appreciate the laughter that you just provided. Oh, oh man. I know, sir. Uh, verse 14 says that therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. The young woman is with child and shall bear a son and name him. I mean, that's gonna be his damn name, not Yeshua, but his name was gonna be Emmanuel. The Lord will bring on you and your people and on your ancestral houses such days as have not come since the day that Ephraim departed from Judea, the king of Assyria. And yet, other than that short time as the Maccabees controlling Jerusalem during the Hasmonean dynasty, Israel has always been conquered. That's why y'all don't read your own book. I thought you were the seed, my guy. Okay, so you're not David Koresh. You're not David Koresh. Okay. Young man is funny, but you know what? It has been 2 hours and 40 minutes. Y'all know I am well over my time, as well as my cigar has been gone for at least 15 minutes. So, therefore, we're done. Especially with this foolishness that this joker just put up here. Matter of fact, I'm gonna do a video after I finish this about that whole little piece about that and add some more information to it. So, y'all have a great night. Y'all have a great night. Great night. And always remember, you have to free yourself to be yourself because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibration. You can pick it up in the merch on the description of my videos on YouTube. In the description of the channel on YouTube is the link, as well as in at the end of most videos, in the comments of most videos on my Facebook. So I will see you guys tomorrow night, where we will continue our What's Wrong with the Bible. We are in Joshua 17. So 19 and 20 for tomorrow. Hopefully it won't be as boring as the last 4 chapters have been. So see y'all tomorrow. Have a good one.